Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome back to SDVoE Presents Face-to-Face AV with Justin Kennington. That's me, your host, Justin Kennington. Today I'm joined from the other side of the world by Zane Au, Director for Shen Milsom Wilke Limited, Hong Kong. He's based in Hong Kong, and so we're going to talk about the AV practice in China and the surrounding regions that he covers. Zane, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Justin. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Why don't we start off with tell us a little bit. I'm going to assume that most or all of our audience knows who Shen is. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your practice in China? What does that look like? How long has the business been there?
We're happy to do that. Shen is obviously an international technology consulting firm headquartered in New York City and with branch offices all over the world. The Hong Kong office was actually founded very early. The Shen's was founded in New York City in 1986. The Hong Kong office started in 1991. And close to a decade after that, we started doing business in China and then the rest of Asia, in Southeast Asia. And we now have offices in China, in Beijing, in Shanghai, in Chengdu, and a small point of presence in Shenzhen. Basically, we do everything that Shen practice in China. We do acoustics consulting, we do audiovisual, IT, and security consulting. Literally, if you know Shen in the States, we do exactly what my counterpart does in North America. And we have now close to 75 people altogether in Asia.
Wow.
The Hong Kong office is the regional headquarters, but I can really see the Shanghai office outnumbering us next year. They're really growing that fast.
Wow. So Hong Kong is the regional office for all of Asia. Is that what I heard?
That is correct. The only reason is we were founded earlier.
You were here first.
Hey. Correct.
That's a good enough reason. So let's talk about China in particular. How this is a huge question, so we'll probably come at it from a few different angles. But let's talk about how China compares as an AV marketplace to the Western world, right? To North America, to Europe, where the bulk of our audience is. So they know that market. Tell us what's different. What's the same?
For your audience who are not so familiar with China, you have to realize China only opened up itself to the rest of the world in the early 80s, basically late 70s, early 80s. But in terms of audiovisual, true professional audiovisual, I would say as late as the 1990s. And because of that, China is really late to the market, if I should use that word. And because China realized that it is kind of a latecomer to the international pro AV market, has been very keen to catch up with the rest of the world, and that is why if you go to China, if we went to China in the last decade or so, you'll see that the end users, the enterprise decision maker, the integrators, the consultants over they're very enthusiastic about what the rest of the world, especially North America and Europe, have been doing in terms of their technology projects. And China has never been shy to invest money into getting the latest and greatest AV equipment and systems. So in that sense, the AV market in China is actually not so different from the rest of the world because it has done its best to catch up with the rest of the world in the last 2 decades. But at the same time, the culture in China can be very different. I mean, if you compare these two very big countries, China and US of A, they are very comparable in terms of the geographical area. Obviously, China has a much bigger population, but in terms of the real, if I should use the word, more affluent, more wealthy people population, that relevant population relevant to Pro AV in China can be very comparable to North America. On the other hand, the culture in China can be very different because, as I said, China is a latecomer, and they're keen to learn. And a keen learner usually can be, if I can use the word susceptible to marketing. So if a vendor, if a manufacturer is good in marketing their products, their technology to China, and if they go to the market early enough, they really enjoy the first come advantage. That is probably the biggest difference between China and India. Branding in India is actually not very important. In China, if you want to succeed in business, you really have to do good branding.
Yeah. Okay. I'm curious, and this just occurred to me. In the last few years, we've seen new barriers to trade put up between the United States and China. Has that had any specific effect on your ability to practice AV, or has that mostly stayed out of the way?
Yes and no. Let me go back a little bit before the pandemic.
Yeah, sure.
If I can use some numbers to help tell my story. I'm not talking about ISE, the Europe show, but if you compare the Infocom show in US just before the pandemic, you got 40,000+ people attending the show.
Yep.
In the last Infocom China before the pandemic, they have if I remember correctly, 37,000. They're very comparable. The market size could be quite comparable. At the same time, even in China, the people have been very open to using Western produced equipment. I mean, where they are manufactured does not matter, but if it's a Western brand, and if the technology is good and appropriate for the projects, they will be very open to adopting it. So in that sense, it's actually the China market just before the pandemic is actually very connected to the rest of the world already. The pandemic obviously changed part of the picture, but at the same time, China has never stopped importing Western products, especially in the Pro AV market. The availability has been impacted quite a bit in the last 2 years for various reasons. But at the same time, the underlying business platform in China has never been really been that badly impacted. One thing that Elon Musk probably is doing right is Elon Musk is saying that Microsoft is saying that they want to create that mega app, just like WeChat. And the last 3 years, even if China could not enjoy a lot of communication and free dialogue interflow with US or Europe, the business platform is actually still very very intact. People can still do their training and all their business activity on this online platform. And I just look at a very good friend of mine. I know that you know Holden, and Holden is conducting his SDVoE training every week, every month over WeChat and over Tencent meeting. And so in a way, China has been partly isolated, partly sanctioned, but at the same time, people find a way, the equipment find a way, the technology find a way into China, one way or the other.
Okay. This is a little bit off our topic, but tell our audience a little bit about what WeChat is. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but I know it's, like you call it, a mega app. So tell us what you mean by that, because I think it's important to how business gets done.
Yeah, and the name mega app is actually the very appropriate name for this thing, because WeChat is obviously a social media, but at the same time, it is also a huge platform covering a lot of different areas. It's a payment app. It is a social media. It is a business platform for people to connect to each other, not just for social interaction, but also to conduct training, a gateway to Tencent Meeting, which is owned by the same owner, Tencent. And so everything it's like a portal to a lot of different things. And I know that the culture in China and in North America can be very different, but this sort of a mega app platform actually can be very can be very, very useful and had been critically important during the last 3 years and during the pandemic, because a lot of people rely on that. Well, in this past April, March, and June, when the Shanghai city was in a total lockdown, people don't go outside. You have to order your takeaway on WeChat. You have to do basically your entire life depends on WeChat. It's actually that important.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, because I feel like here in our world, in America, in Europe too, we certainly use LinkedIn and other social media platforms as part of business, as part of messaging and marketing. I admit I'm a bit of an old fogey about it, and I kind of wish we didn't have to do it. But okay, we do it. But it just feels to me, and I'm not in China, I'm not on WeChat, so I don't know. But when I speak to people about it, it feels like it's much more central to how business communication is done. I mean, you just said people's lives depended on it, right? It's like
you're quite correct in saying that. And I mean, when I started doing business in China 20 plus years ago, but the last 10 years, when I got to learn the new tricks of doing business in China, you go to China, you hand your business card to someone, and the next thing to happen usually, can I add your WeChat? That is before they ask for my email address.
Okay.
It is actually that important for people to actually be able to reach you over WeChat. Now, a lot of reasons behind, and that is partly because China has been a latecomer in terms of electronic communication.
Yeah. Well, but there's an early mover advantage in business, and there's a late mover advantage, right? China got
correct.
to have a mega app because, here in America, we had to develop Twitter and PayPal and WhatsApp. Well, maybe that wasn't in America, but, and Facebook and LinkedIn. And they all kind of came up on their own. And then in China, a few years later, somebody said, well, if all these things are useful, let's put them in one app, and off we go. So there's an advantage to getting to see what somebody else did first and make your decisions in a more
like it or
informed way.
not, the antitrust consideration is actually not so
true
forefront and important. But like it or not, WeChat is here, and a lot of people in China, even us in Hong Kong, rely on it to do for daily business a lot.
Yeah. Man, I got to sign up for this. It sounds great. We've been circling around it a little bit. Why don't we dive right into the pandemic? What I see from the outside is I think in the last 12 to 18 months, COVID has been much more impactful on day-to-day life in China than it has, in America, in Europe. We sort of gave up in that time frame on trying to eliminate COVID and keep it out of our lives, and we just sort of decided to live with it and try to mitigate it. I think China has only very recently, like in the past couple of weeks, made a decision like that. So there have been lockdowns in Beijing, lockdowns in Shanghai, that's all just loosening up. Talk about the impact that's had specifically on your AV business. Is it all bad? Is it some good? Tell me. I don't know.
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. I'll give you the very immediate implication. If China had not decided to change its or to lift the COVID restriction overnight in the past 2 weeks, there's a good chance that the Infocom China Beijing show will still happen next week.
Wow.
But Avixia, the association, really could not take the risk, and they decided to postpone the show from next week, the 21st of December, to next July. So basically, it sounds bad, but at the same time, I think it might be a blessing in disguise, because if the show had gone ahead, it would not even be a China show. It would be a local Beijing City show, and that might not be the best for the Pro AV business in China.
Yeah.
Anyway, short term, and I'm right now I'm a little bit worried about my brother and sister, my colleagues in Beijing, because they are after they lift the restriction last week. It is it is actually they're actually having that very short-term impact because the right after you lift the COVID restriction, obvious the COVID case would sharply rise for a short period. But I guess every country, every city has gone through that period, and hopefully in 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, they will have gone through that painful period, and then everything will resume to normal soon enough. That's my belief, and that's also my hope. And hopefully by next spring, most of China would at least become the old China, the normal China that I like to know, and I really look forward to going back to China to do business, especially for the InfoComm China show.
Right. Yeah. Certainly. We hope that they get through this challenging period in an easy as possible way. What we saw in America is, as the pandemic first hit in 2020, of course, there was a massive decline in business, right? As everything locked down, nobody wanted anybody in their buildings. Nobody could go in and install AV. It was the last thing on anyone's mind. But then just a few months after that, we saw a sort of a roaring back of demand, maybe to even higher than pre-pandemic, as everyone said, wait a minute, we need to adjust our communication systems for this new world. We need hybrid meeting rooms. We need Zoom and Teams everywhere. We need more AV. Have you yet observed something like that in China? Do you think you will now that COVID-0 is over? How do you see the demand picture changing over the last 2 years and upcoming?
That is an interesting point. The transition, the migration into hybrid has in China, they almost took place in parallel with the rest of the world. We were doing exactly that starting in 2020, and so by now the amount of hybrid capable meeting rooms in corporate and office spaces, I think they should be on par with the rest of the world. But at the same time, when I look back now, we in 2020, early 2021, like it or not, believe it or not, I couldn't go to mainland China from Hong Kong. There was a very strict restriction. So the project that we started in 2019, we have a lot of difficulty finishing that, but we managed to finish all this project with various technology means, and we actually conduct testing and commissioning over Zoom for multiple projects in China and Tokyo actually. So when there is a challenge, people will find a way to overcome it. Yep. But now when we look forward to resuming our normal business workflow, I can really see, as you say, that the AV system got overhauled. We have hybrid system, but at the same time, there are a lot of AV systems that were not that much used during the last 3 years. And I can totally see that next year, in 23, when China and most of Asia have opened up, this AV system, they are all 3 years older, and many are already requiring retrofit and maybe outright replacement. So that could be a real business case for a lot of integrators and manufacturers eyeing the China market or Asian market, because everything is 3 years older, and technology has advanced so much in the last 3 years. So that might be, could be just my visual thinking, but I think that could be a very positive view for a lot of the Pro AV manufacturers.
I have to assume, especially under the COVID-0 regime, that working from home is a huge part of China business culture these days.
Yes.
My question is, so that was true in the States, at least for the first year, probably for the first 2 years of the pandemic. What we've seen in the last year over here is certainly different employers have taken different tactics, but there are many employers in the United States that have said, we don't like working from home. We don't need this anymore. We want you all back in the office. I'm curious, with COVID zero now lifted, and I'm asking you to look at a crystal ball here. I don't think you'll know, but I'm curious for your insight. How much of work from home culture do you think will stick around in China? And how much will it be, let's get back to the office now that we can?
I'll say it depends on the industry. I mean, for the architectural and engineering industry, the architect, the consultant business, I think there is a good case of some people working from home some days in a week. But at the same time, I can really see that after this painful period in China, uh, say April and May next year, when the COVID, hopefully the COVID
Mm-hmm.
current COVID wave has come down, uh, the 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 majority corporate business, not necessarily the financial sector, but the the normal the bigger
Mm-hmm.
mainstream corporate sector, they probably will have more people going back to work in the office instead of from home. That's just my feeling. I I I didn't ask my colleagues in Shanghai about their view on this
Yeah.
one, but I would think uh, if my colleagues feel the same way, after 3 years working, actually, I didn't actually work from home that often. I go to office every day, but we have to go out to see people. We would love to do that instead of zooming with other
Yeah.
people, because that is not the way to build business and relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly that part of the opening up over here was a relief. You can ask the salespeople who like to drag me around places with them, and I like to complain and say I don't want to go. Like even me, after a few years locked in the house, I said, okay, where can we go? Let's go see some people. This sounds good. Um, Last serious question, then I have a not so serious question. What do you think, if anything, that our mostly Western audience of designers and integrators, what do you think they could stand to learn by studying and following the Chinese market that might benefit their practice day to day?
Ah, I'm not sure whether you want it's either to learn or to learn the lesson that we learn a very high cost. Uh, uh, I mean, I'm not talking about the COVID. Uh, during the pandemic, China actually in the first year in 2020, there were still the China show. If you might not know about that one, but so in terms of the COVID waves, China is like 1.5 years behind Western countries. So right now we are still 1.5 years behind in the
Mm-hmm.
recovery. So that is the one thing. But at the same time, I guess the if there's anything to learn from what had happened the last 3 years is uh, in China in the last year, the last 12 months, China has seen the COVID difficulties in isolated places in Shanghai in April, May, and June. Beijing basically the last few months. Uh, so it basically prolonged the whole pandemic, because if they had uh, coordinated a unified relaxation or
Mm-hmm.
opening schedule, this painful period might not be as long. And 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 the same thing with in the pro AV market. Uh, if the whole market opens up at the same time instead of piecemeal, uh, one city at a time, the entire marketplace could I think the marketplace can withstand a certain period of
Yeah.
pain. But right now we are where we are, and we just have to wait another few
Yeah.
months.
Well, I hope that it goes smoothly, and I hope that business stays strong, as I'm sure it will. My last question
It will.
is simply, how in the world did you become a Buffalo Bills fan?
Huh, that is, and I'll give you another one, and then you understand. I'm also a New York Mets fan.
Oh, okay.
The entire Shen office in New York City, they are Yankee fans, and I'll give you the reason. 1986.
Oh boy.
1986. Okay, that explains everything. I become attached to Western culture basically.
I live in Red Sox country, so I understand 1986.
I talked to another Boston person last week, and he said the same thing. Like,
lucky for me, I'm not a Red Sox fan. Sorry, locals, I'm not. But I certainly know the story.
And that Boston native said, "I'm sorry for you."
Oh, actually, I'm an Astros fan, and what we all forget is the NLCS that happened before that World Series was Mets over Astros. So I'm not too happy about it, even though I don't care about the Red Sox.
No problem. Astro got it this year.
That's true. Okay, so what do they like for football in the New York office? They're Giants fans?
I really do not know, because I don't talk to them as much in the winter, because in the winter when they go to work at 8, it's already 9 p.m. my time. But I don't believe there are too many Buffalo fans there.
That's what I would think. I was trying to determine if this was just if you were just trying to be different than everybody there, right? They'll take the Yankees and the Giants. You'll take the Mets and the Bills. Well, anyway, Zane, this was really insightful. I'm glad. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to chat with us. It's morning over here when I'm shooting this, and late evening for you. So thanks again. Thank you all for watching. We're doing this show every week now, so if you want to be notified when we post a new one, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Zane, where can they find more about Shen Milsom Wilke? I'm sure there's a website.
Yes, so you can go to www.smwllc.com. That is the global website.
That makes sense. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for watching. Good night.